we completed this film at a ridiculous pace in 18 months, considering that it was self-funded, self-produced, and the film is self-distributed. That is like, it's a pace that I wouldn't ever want to go at again. But the impetus was that we started our show October 25th, 1990. And so when we came up with the idea to start production, that was February 2014. And so, kind of had a conversation with the squad, like, yo, we should try to finish this so we could celebrate the release of the film with the 25th anniversary of our show. And we made it, And so that's props to everybody in the production crew. Our editor, Mariah Moret, is here. Where is she? Mariah, stand up, yo. Give her a round of applause, yo. And she lives in Brooklyn. What? Nah, but props to Meredith as well from Brooklyn Historical Society. Where you at, Meredith?
Where's Meredith? There she is over there.
Yeah.
Where's Meredith over there?
You got to get your props.
But you guys didn't you try, or somebody tried to do a documentary on you guys years ago, and then it stopped? Am I right? Because some of that footage was...
Yeah, it never got past people coming to the show and shooting video. Nothing. Okay. There was never a script, an outline, a budget, a proposal, any editing.
Right.
And of course that worked to our advantage because we obtained all that footage for the film.
Right. And then chop it all together. So when you guys, all of those scenes, it seems like you guys are talking to the artists. Are they coming? Is that in one of your crib? Or you going to them? Were you going around and catching people, or was there sort of a schedule to bring everybody in? Because it's a lot of people you kind of get to in those conversations.
For the most part, we tried to make those interviews actually happen at WKCR and
the new KCR studio,
right?
The one that we broadcast. The building doesn't exist anymore,
but it still looks old.
Even though it still look old. Huh?
Yeah, it's grimy. Still grimy.
Yeah,
it's 2015 grimy, but
which is different than '95. So even going back into that, I was thinking about it.
Oh, wait,
sorry. Go ahead.
So we interviewed a majority of the on-camera people at WKCR, but I mean, sure, we went to Nas in LA.
Right.
Stretch went to Eminem in Detroit, and we went to Jay-Z's office in Midtown.
What are you laughing? What was?
It took a long time to get Jay on camera.
Yeah.
He canceled on us 4 times, I think.
But he seemed like he was into it, though.
He loved it. Once we got him, he was
yeah,
great.
I mean, it's a question we get a lot, like how was it getting Nas, J, M? And it was never really a question of them as individuals wanting to do it. It's their handlers and the many layers that you got to get through to them.
Right.
But they always wanted to do it. Every time I would see any of them in a social setting, they were like, yeah, let's do it.
Right.
I'm like, let's do it now.
Right. I'll come right this minute.
I got an iPhone, and there's a closet over there.
Exactly. Let's make it happen. But Fat Joe seemed like he was ready to be there.
Joe's interview went about an hour and a half. And, props to Fat Joe, because where Nas and Jay, it took 18 months to get them. When Stretch reached out to Joe, literally 3 days later, he was on a flight from Miami, yo, I'm here for y'all. What? And he showed up by himself? No, he had one of his homeboys with him, but no entourage, no just...
And he did that again when we had our 25th reunion concert in Central Park.
Who was there?
Oh, the big screening at
Central Park?
State.
Only
Three
one?
people.
Three people were there?
People.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. That's not indicative of how many showed up. Didn't you break attendance records?
Yeah, we did. We had 3,500, but we broke... for the Q&A session that they had at RSVP, the woman booked it. She was like, yeah, I think we'll probably get 40, maybe 50. The day they opened it up, 200 people RSVP'd, broke a record in their 30-year history, and then they had to close it. So that was kind of dope. That was nice. That felt good.
What do you think that is? I mean, this is we've been doing this told firsthand for a couple of years.
I was going to tell you about Joe in Summer Stage.
Oh, did we skip? I'm skipping.
Yeah,
I got too many questions. I got too many questions.
Tell them, Stretch.
So... Yeah, so
exactly. Joe,
for 200.
Joe's enthusiasm and really putting his money where his mouth is. He did that twice. He did that for our interview where he flew himself up from Florida, and he did it again at Summer Stage where he not only flew himself up to participate, but he flew up Diamond D from Atlanta, and got the entire DITC together to open our show. And that show was the first time that DITC ever collectively performed as a cohesive group. Ever, yeah.
Wow. And is that going back just from the relationship? I mean, I know you talk about putting more Arsenio, but you guys had kind of a special relationship with him, and it was like Curious was in there. It was funny that nobody talked to Curious, because I feel like that was your guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I put Curious on. He lived in my building. I gave him his nickname. I started him rhyming. I mean, everything. Gave him a job at Def Jam. Got him his job.
He did enough for him.
Right.
I'm gonna put him in a movie now.
Right. Then you signed him, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was executive
He signed him. He
producer,
managed him.
his debut
Did his
album,
laundry.
man.
Flossed his teeth.
Yeah, but Curious, he deserves a lot of respect because as the resident, sort of off the top of the head MC, he really raised the standard for other guests when they came in. It's like they looking at this dude, and he's there every week, and they listening to him, and it forced a lot of MCs to be like, yo, if I'm going up to their show, like I gotta come correct, otherwise I'm just gonna ate up by their house MC basically.
Right. That is true. That is how it sounds.
Peace to Curious.
Yeah. And I just one other thing I want to get over when I watched it the first, because I came to BAM when y'all. I guess was that the first.
That was our U.S. theatrical premiere. We ran at BAM for 7 days, a week long. Yeah.
And it was sort of like it's interesting how it plays out. It's almost like a buddy movie, right? You guys get together, and then there's a sort of breakup and then reconciliation. But I feel like it was that breakup was sad for us. Like Joe talked about it, Jay-Z talked about it. But I imagine you guys obviously don't want to get into the bad parts. But were you aware of how people felt like when it all broke up?
It was a bigger deal for other people than it was for us.
Right.
I mean, we were just like, I think, even though we were at different places when it happened, I was trying to give it my best shot at doing Hot 97. Bob wasn't into Hot 97. He kept going at KCR. But I think what we both had in common was we weren't feeling it like we had been. And the film sort of paints it's a nostalgic look back at a special time, but that special time had there was a lot about it that wasn't special, and there was a lot about that time that was a real drag and a pain in the ass, and we've got a lot of memories that weren't all rosy, and so I think at that time it was just, I think in our different ways we were figuring out, all right, how do we move forward?
Right. And you did very well. I remember when at BAM somebody sort of talked about that, what's not in there, which kind of makes sense, was sort of Fondulum kind of came out. So was it maybe you kind of moving to the left, and we have MF Doom, and you had Kool Keith in there. There was, out of that sort of tough times, there came some good parts for both of you guys individually.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the radio show was such a foundation for so many facets of my career since. My first gig as a writer was at Source Magazine in 1990, but my splash was Vibe Magazine in 1994, and Mimi Valdez, who used to answer the door for us, became the editor-in-chief, and she was the one that put me on there, and then Vibe created a lot of DJ opportunities around the world. My first gig in South Africa, 2000, was because I had loyal readers of Vibe, and it was distributed there. So on and on and on. I mean, even when I did my Nike commercials, the producers and the marketing directors there, they were fans of the show. And they knew I played ball, so it was like, oh, this dude checks off on hip-hop, he checks off on basketball. So, ridiculous, props to what the show, what the listeners, what Stretch, opened up a door, a door still to this day that I'm thankful for and eating off of.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting in subtext, like the industry that sprouted off when Dante was in there talking about that. And then I remember when I was coming up, like those Raucous days, it feels like the guys at Raucous would just listen to your show and then just hand out contracts.
Fat Beats. Fat Beats, arguably, is a cottage industry that was birthed by our show.
Right. A place to buy the records.
And I know Fat Beats, Joe from Fat Beats was like, yo, when your show stopped, like it changed things in that chamber significantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
For those who don't know, Fat Beats was an independently owned record shop founded by a hip hop head.
and distribution company.
Yeah, and
Still is.
it grew into a distribution company.
That used
I feel
to
like
be
we're
in
ignoring
your,
this side.
I know we're looking this way, but it's interesting you say that was more of a function of time than blaming you guys individually. But listen, because we don't have that much time, let's open it up.
Here-
No.
By
How much time do we
the
have?
way, you might be the best moderator we've had
Is
to
that
date,
right?
and we've had some zany ones. I mean,
try not to
you're
be too
this
zany,
is
though.
no, you're not zany
I
at all.
gotta-
This is
I'm
good.
trying to box
right?
in all my questions.
No, you're good, you're good, you're
You're
good.
keeping
You're
it
good.
moving too.
Although it seems like all the questions you sort of have, they are kind of answered in the movie. I
Well,
kind of feel
thank
like at the
thank
end
you
of
for
the
not
day-
asking questions that were answered in the movie.
Exactly. I'm just in
Because
here
we
spinning
get
my
that a
wheels.
lot. So, what are your favorite moments from the show?
Yeah.
Like, you just watched all of them.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's
This guy last week in Chicago. So, yo, who made that Nas beat? I was like, word? Really?
you're not paying, you want to hit him in the head like, yo, you're not paying attention.
Strange.
Let me share with the audience, just in case if you have to leave early before the Q&A is over. Our film is, another time, self-distributed, self-funded. We had the good graces of a Kickstarter campaign where we were able to raise some money to put this out. So it's available for download directly from our website, stretchandbobbito.com. And, encourage everybody that if you love the film and want to evangelize, to go out and support it and buy it. We also have another screening on December 8th in New York for those. I mean, people always hit us up like, "Yo, I can't get in." It's so like, "Yo, the ticket's been on sale for like a month."
Right. Where you been at?
Why you hit me up at 5:00 the night of? But yeah. So if we have people that went to BAM like 3-4 nights. So feel more than welcome to come back on December 8th. We're screening at Le Poisson Rouge, which is the same venue that we had our 20th anniversary concert. I don't know how many people here were there. Dang.
I was there.
Two.
There's a,
Two.
but this is good. This means that this is a new audience. Do you know who we are? Or they just wandered like through
Right.
Brooklyn Heights, like, oh my God, there's an event.
I got nothing better to do.
Let's go see it, Phil.
They're history buffs. They come here every week to the Brooklyn Historical
Let's
Society.
all
Get
the
their
stuff
dose of
that
history.
Marsha and Meredith do. But real quick, because the Kickstarter kind of launched after the movie was all done.
Right.
Normally those Kickstarters are like this somewhat desperate
Yes.
attempt, but you guys kind of flipped it. You done it. So just
Well, it's
talk us
just,
through
I mean,
that.
this is my second film. My first one was titled Doing It in the Park, Pick Up Basketball, NYC. How many of you have seen that?
Get a little bit more for that.
So, that was DIY as well, and we were at the point of trying to put it out and needed funds to release it independently. If you listen to the show, if you know anything about who me and Stretch are and what we represent, I mean, it should be no surprise that we would be sort of like diehards about releasing this film independently. There's no Hollywood studio, there's no, huge multimillionaire executive producer on the credits. It's us. But so, it's expensive to do that though. And so the Kickstarter we raised $65,000 by the good graces of, I think, 749 backers. So that was fly. That like,
Anyone here back the film?
I did. Where's my hat?
6
What up, Kente?
people. It's good. It's
all right,
good.
you good? What's that day? What up, my day? It's my family right there.
And it was for what was it? It was like closed captioning, all these other things you want to do for the film, right?
I mean, you can't even
Didn't-
imagine.
I mean, it didn't cover all the expenses. It just was
Not even
a
close.
realistic goal that we felt we could make
Right.
easily.
Yeah.
to get
But
the
it was
money.
wild. But you overshot your goal. It was wildly successful.
Yes, we
right?
did,
People
but that still
jumping.
doesn't cover all the.
Not enough. So go download it, right? Go download it. and
Yes.
make the rest of the,
Thank
the,
you.
the money there.
And spread the word.
Okay, so let's open it up because we got about 20 minutes, and I don't want to dominate it as much as I would love to. Yes, sir.
Testing.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you guys. And I'm not old enough to have been a listener, but I see the influence, so thank you.
Cool.
My question is there any freestyle that you wanted to get in the movie but you couldn't because you didn't have footage or audio?
No, I think we were able to get all of our favorite moments in. The one question mark was Biggie's freestyle because we didn't own it, we didn't have it. But then, as you see, 50 Grand, his original DJ, who helped produce his demo, had the tape. In fact, he had that in a safe. In fact, Stretch, you want to tell him how you digitized that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, about that, I mean, a number of years ago, I started a blog where I'd post old shows, and the point of the blog was to find like-minded people who had old shows, really just to get the Biggie show. That's all I wanted to do with that blog. That's all. Oh, shout out to Martin Moore. He had an incredible show on WNYU in the 90s.
Stand up.
And
Stand up.
Martin's in the back.
He's in the back,
Yeah.
playing cool.
And for a long while, Martin's show and our show were sort of back to back on Thursday nights, and that dude kept us on our toes, crazy. We weren't used to that in the early '90s. It was like, we just did whatever we wanted to do, and it was no competition in terms of what we were doing. Then these guys came on. It was like, okay, they just did 2 hours and they played all these joints. What the hell are we gonna do? I guess we'll just talk shit. So, but he, Biggie went to his show, and for some reason, those episodes exist. They're in the ether. This episode, probably because it was so early in Biggie's career, arguably before he had a career, that it didn't exist. Anyway, so I started this blog, and I got a lot of people talking falsely about, oh yeah, I got that, and then they would never send it. Oh, that's in my mom's garage and basement, attic.
There was one dude that said it was in his mom's crib in Kentucky.
Kentucky.
I was like, what?
You couldn't pick a better state. The Biggie scene ends up in here, but what you're seeing on camera in the film is our legitimate reaction to hearing this for the first time since that episode happened. And I used to say to Bob, I was like, yo, if we ever find this thing, and then when 50 Grand confirmed that he had it, I said, warning, there's a lot of buildup from this, like, oh, this Biggie thing's gonna be incredible. It might really suck.
Right.
And then we'd be sad. But it was incredible. He killed it.
Yeah.
Killed it. And it's such an interesting moment to hear Biggie on a Cypress Hill beat. You would never really, that's not a beat you would think that Biggie would be on, and that's because that when that beat was popping, that was a real sort of transformative time, 1990, between the 80s and the 90s, and it's you could still feel the 80s in that moment.
Right. That scene made me think about this movie as almost a historical record of that. You don't realize that whole thing about him with the Bronx Zoo. Like, it was not always a foregone conclusion that these guys were going to be stars, right? They were just regular dudes up there.
Yeah, that's what Nas says. Yeah, it's true. The typical avenues for exposure in the late 80s, I think, I'm not trying to disparage anyone individually, but I just think just the nature of things running their course, the mix show DJs in the late 90s on commercial radio were kind of playing very commercial, mainstream singles, and in terms of being sort of fertile ground for up-and-coming unsigned talent that they may have had been in the mid-'80s, that really wasn't happening anymore in the late 90s.
You mean in the early 90s?
I mean, in the late 80s. Late 80s. So when we got on the radio, it was needed.
Yeah, I find it funny also that Funkmaster Flex is the one that pulls you aside and gives you counsel, because there was you kind of touch on it about how Hot 97 were the bad guys and you were the good guys. But here we see this interaction, and then you guys, they sort of get into business with them. But it's interesting that Funkmaster Flex, who is the commercial guy, gives you the advice that kind of changed everything.
But that was in 1990.
Right. Before it all, or before he really...
Yeah, that's when he was an artist, 9MM and Funkmaster
He actually came up
Flex
to our show.
as a guest.
Oh, that's what it was?
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't him? Okay, gotcha. Okay, let's get...
Then he
question.
became the bad guy.
Funk Flex, the franchise. You have any more questions? We got one over here.
Bobbito, when
Oh, we're getting a mic for you, boss.
You're getting hype.
When the credits roll, there's like 40 songs in this movie.
Yeah.
Okay, and how do you afford to license this many tracks
Sure.
on a for low budget independent production?
There are 108 individual music cues in this film. And if you look at the list of them, it's an incredible soundtrack. There's a lot of very fleeting background moments that we credit, but you may not have heard them. But if you look at the actual credits, they may have been too small on the screen, but download the movie at stretchandbobbito.com and read the credits.
So to answer your question, though, no. The law actually protects filmmakers in the educational, cultural, documentary arena, so that you can use limited copywritten material, so long as there's commentary about that material, and it's not for entertainment purposes.
And it's
so
not-
very different from a Batman movie, and you hear, Cypress Hill in the background. This is different. It's like I'm being interviewed in 1993, Stretch is DJing, Tribe Called Quest, God Shines Lives Through is playing in the background. We can't extract that song. It's native to the footage. Or in the case where, Stretch and I are reminiscing about the Nas freestyle, if we don't play the Nas freestyle, we're missing an opportunity to educate people, or even with the Biggie freestyle. So we had a fair use attorney, and so everything was, on the books. Everything is transparent, and that's why all the cues exist. But there is licensed music in the film. The opening title track is OC Time's Up, which when he hit me up was like, yo, the series is called Told It Firsthand. And I was like, yo, that's a line from OC Time's Up. And I was like, perfect, and that was the anthemic song that we had to license for. And it took a long time to license that one song as well, just because there's a lot, 90s hip hop records, there's a lot of disputes, there's a lot of samples, there's a lot of things that weren't cleared, and et cetera. But, and then we also had the good graces of Eli Escobar, who created original score music in the film, and some of which we might release as a original soundtrack down the road. And props to Jay Zone as well, who did the drums in the live sessions for those original compositions that Ellie produced. Yeah, you're welcome.
Word.
One thing made me question I want to throw in there was about the sort of that West. There was the Cypress Hill, sort of about and Sway, and then there's Casual and Domino in there.
Souls of Mischief.
The Souls of Mischief kind of
Yep.
coming in here about
Yep.
how those guys on the West Coast, you guys were also that gate. They couldn't necessarily get on commercial radio, but they were welcome to you. This is just kind of a different era when I feel like it was going a little bit, the flow of communication was open a little bit more. So I don't know if you talk about that, about having people, you're so New York, but you had a lot of non-New Yorkers giving you, great.
Yeah, I mean,
great
I
content.
think in 1990, 91, 92, that was when New York City was still the center of the world when it comes to hip hop, and which means that there are people all across the country and the world. The type of hip hop they ascribe to has a New York, sort of a New York aesthetic.
Right.
Even though when Souls of Mischief
Good night. Thanks for coming.
when Souls of Mischief rap, he's from Seattle.
Right. He's like, you guys are not talking about
Fuck
me.
this shit.
I'm out of here.
And he plays Sir Mix a lot. So guys like Souls, I mean, they look to New York for their inspiration. I mean, I think they love Too Short and local artists, but the music and the artists that they love were New York, and so I think that when Cypress Hill are making records back then, Souls of Mischief, all those guys, it's their version, their lens on a New York aesthetic. I mean, you look at all the the hieroglyphics, like the types of beats they're doing. Those aren't West Coast beats. Right. Those are, I mean, now we think of them as hyro, but it's really rooted in a New York tradition of digging for a certain type of loop, a certain type of sound, drums that sound a certain way. So we had a New York-centric show, but it was open to anybody. Didn't matter where you were from.
Right. Gotcha. Question?
Stretch, you said kind of towards the end that you fell out of love with the music that was coming out in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Do you still feel that way about hip hop now, or have you kind of come around to it?
Because I was so close to it, I felt a lot more strongly about it back then. Now I don't care, so it doesn't really make a difference to me. I wish that there were the kinds of hip hop records coming out now that came out in the early 90s and in the late and mid 80s, because then I'd have some music in that arena that I was crazy about. But the fact that there isn't doesn't keep me up at night. There's plenty of incredible music. And you know, we're neither of us is really. I'm not really qualified to speak about hip hop in 2015. I mean, I don't follow it that much. I mean, I'm a club DJ, so I play records that I still try to play differently than other DJs, which means there's a whole lot of new music that is popular that I just won't play just because it's for various reasons. But you know, I don't follow it. So, but the main difference is that I don't care now, whereas back then it kind of bummed me out, and I got very hostile about it. So when I sort of had this public departure from hip hop, it was like on Facebook, and I was being just really kind of negative and hostile. And friends of mine were like, "Dude, what's your problem? Like, that's not the move." Thanks, he's kicking me. I'm talking too much. We do that.
But Bob, you had a little you got into different sort of once you guys broke up. You were doing a lot more like world music.
That's actually completely off. And no. I mean, for people who really know me, I mean, you know, I'm born in 1966, so I'm pre-hip hop.
Right.
So I was always listening to a wide array of music, and if you saw my Vibe magazine column, I was absolutely playing. You know, I would play like 5 different genres it didn't matter what artist was featured in the column. And once I started DJing in clubs, I did the same.
And that goes for both of us.
Yeah. So it's a misinterpretation of my interest that, you know, the hip hop show was over and now I'm playing Latin music. It's like, nah. My father was a Latin jazz musician, so. Yeah.
Right. So it was running all throughout.
Yep.
Gotcha.
We didn't have to do a hip hop show.
Yeah.
I mean, it was such a whimsical thing that we actually got this show. We fantasized about it, like we said in the movie, and then I got a time, so I was like, "Yo, let's do a hip hop show." We didn't know that we would even get the show because we were alternating week to week with another show, because that's another story. But their show was unprofessional, and can you imagine unprofessional compared to ours? I mean, and we had no idea if we would be on at all. Then beyond that first year, beyond the second year, so it just none of this was expected.
Right.
We could have done another show. We could have done like the Stretch and Bob Latin rock clash, reggae, disco.
Who knows?
Funk hour.
Maybe that happens in 2016.
And the administrator, KCR, was not really aware of how popular you were, right? So they were keeping you on the string, even though you guys are having such an impact.
They knew.
They were
Sure,
aware.
sure.
The annual fundraiser, we would raise the most. Our show would raise the most money.
That's good.
Let's go to a question.
How did you guys navigate the tension between artists? Or did you feel the need to navigate it?
Is this column talking? I don't see anyone saying
Stand up so they
anything.
can see you, brother.
Sorry.
The speaking column of Brooklyn Historical Society on Ripley's Believe It or Not.
I mean, there was.
What was the question?
The question was, how do we navigate the beef, I guess, between artists?
I'm taller and whiter, said the column. Say it again, what?
I mean, you know, I was the one. I mean, sure, we had Mimi Valdez open the door to 30 Wu-Tang members and
With masses on.
masses on.
Masses.
But usually, I was the one. You know, through the 12 years of being on the radio, that answered the door and you know, accommodated the artist in the waiting room before they were getting on. And for the most part, it was a lot of harmony. But there was definitely moments that were testy and, you know, as I mentioned in the film, death threats and attacks, all of which, you know, as Stretch said, it's an era that we'd soon move on from. You know, it's a lot of stuff that wasn't easy to deal with. But you know, it's a small percentage of the great moments and joy that we experienced, and yeah, like the whole East-West, you know, when that was like a big thing, like that was, we didn't play into that whatever. I mean, it was like, if you're nice, you're gonna get some love, and if you're not nice, then we don't care where you're from. You could be from Columbia's campus, or you whack, you know.
Right.
You're not getting no love.
Right on. We got another one over here.
Word. Oh.
Okay, so I have a two-part question for both of you.
Are we gonna allow that?
Uh-oh.
We don't usually allow two-part questions.
Should we allow it? Yes or no?
It's a good one.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Okay, at what point in your journey from your humble beginnings to now did you all, or individually or collectively, realize the legacy and the impact you were leaving for yourselves in the name of hip-hop? Second part. And how did that realization impact the momentum and the passion that you have for your show?
You got all that?
I got an answer
Just tell
for
them.
both of them.
Right.
We made a film, so we realized,
just
like
did-
in the process of making this film, we realized we didn't have no metrics back then, and we didn't know. It wasn't until I was doing research to write the script, I was like, oh snap! All these artists, they've sold more than 300 million records. Wow! And that's just impact in terms of, you know, industry and sales. We're not, you know, in terms of the impact on people's lives, you know, that becomes evident when people are on camera and being moved to tears and you know, and then going through the letters that me and Stretch, when me and Stretch parted ways, we had like a joint custody of all the fan letters.
Split custody.
Split custody. So Stretch one day comes with a box like, yo, Bob, I found, you know, letters. And so I'm reading through all the letters and being like, and you see the letters manifest in the film. That, you know, they become another voice to lead you through it. And so, you know, really, I think it's the film that's making us realize what an impact that we had. And then, and seeing, you know, how we've sold out Berlin and Bogota and Atlanta and Chicago. I mean, you know, so many screenings around the world where it's not just no empty seats. I'm talking about like LA, we had like 50 people by the exit door.
550 people.
Yeah, standing like, yo, just want to see the film. So, you know, and it's going to continue, you know, because like the brother sitting next to you, like, he didn't even know, he didn't listen to us back then. So now we got a ripple effect for another generation. Hopefully, you know, I mean, the true ambition is for this film to, you know, in 2045, to still be relevant like the way Star Wars is for my generation. That's the innocent ambition.
Wow. That's heavy. I think we got time for one more, yeah?
You got a question in the back? Oh,
Oh, we got in the back over here.
Uh-huh.
The side that stretched didn't show
Got
no
jacked.
it's the talking column again.
love. Yeah, exactly. It moved.
Yo, so when I saw the title for the film, I was really intrigued, and I was wondering, like, if you guys believe or are willing to speak on the idea of radio or the format having the potential that it did back then. Now, like, say with Beats One or different radio shows and things like that. You
We
know what I mean?
almost got through the whole Q&A without that question.
We have to address.
We gotta know.
We have to address this question, but then we need one more. We need one more.
All right.
You take this one. Be quick.
No. In a word, no. Radio is not as important as it was. Radio stations across the country all sound the same because they're all programmed by corporate offices that are owned by one or two companies. That's a result of the 90s deregulation of media. And you know, with the internet, that's just, we know what it's like, right? I don't really have to tell you what the experience of learning about new music is like. I mean, how many people out here rely on a radio show on a weekly basis to get incredible music, and there's nowhere else you can get it? Put your hand up if that exists. 3, 4 people. All right. Yeah. So there's your answer.
But I do, it's funny, when I was watching this again for this, you do see your influence on other radio shows, right? All of this sort of, this lightheartedness, even how y'all just get down with each other. You were in the hallway just yucking it up. Like, you guys cannot stop enjoying each other's company. And I feel like a lot of radio shows are trying to duplicate this sort of like make fun of each other. You hear it on like Hot 97 in the morning. I'm like, this is all kind of like a version of Stretch and Bobbito to me. I know you hate that radio question, but I need to maybe reverse the polarity of it. I think they're trying to be like you as much as, you know.
Man, I think the atmosphere of the show, which grows out of our friendship, there's been an attempt to emulate that at times. But I also think, if people have a genuine chemistry on the air and they're gonna have fun, playing music for people is supposed to be fun. It's not a serious thing, right?
Right.
So if it works, it works. We've also heard people, have contrived fun on the radio is not that entertaining.
Right.
So,
Right.
and I've done radio with other people, and I've done other things with other people. Sorry, Bob.
You cheated on Bob.
But it's really what this is. How do I get around this?
Special.
Get it. Let's do one more question.
All right. Let's get one more. I think.
Whoa. Demando.
Let's let the lady go first. We'll be gentlemen.
Get a question from the. Listen, we'll hang out in front, and for a little while. We have stickers. We want to encourage everybody to download the film.
We have merchandise at stretchandbobbito.com.
I wore a Jay-Z Big L t-shirt tonight. There's only 100 of these. They're sold out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we have other merchandise. We got a Hayes t-shirt coming. Go to the website, stretchandbobbito.com.
Go to it every day. Just read it every day.
What's up, y'all?
Click, click, click.
Okay, this one really doesn't count because it's not a question. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for, I'm a big advocate of us telling our stories. So people who were actually there and witnessed it, not only just witnessed, but actually created the culture and were leaders. Thank you so much for telling your story. As somebody who grew up with you, and your tapes were hot commodities when I was in college in Virginia, I'm telling you. But I grew up with you, and I am very proud to see the men that you've become. Had some questions about that, a few times, with the commentary, like listening to the show. But I'm so proud of the men that you've become and the way that you've grown and individually, and then you've come back together. So thank you on behalf of us all and all of your listeners.
Where in Virginia were you?
I went to college, Hampton University. Hampton, so it was a small campus.
I spent an unfortunate year in Virginia.
You went to didn't you go to UVA for a year, right?
What was I thinking? Yeah.
And
I went to UVA.
just to add to that point, Stretch and I have been releasing archival cassettes from our show, and Stretch has been the point person with that, running the show, and he'll tell me, he'll be like, "Yo, Bob, it's really hard to get 90 minutes of mic breaks that aren't embarrassing. We're not happy about some of the stuff that we talked about back then. Quite honestly, we're not the same people as we were in the 90s."
You can tell that we were all growing at that era. We were trying to find ourselves and, seeing, the conversations and learning and growing and bumping your head and making mistakes, but seeing the end result, I'm very proud.
Word.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, listen, I do want to get the final word because I never told you this, Stretch, when I came back in here, but you went to UVA before you went to Columbia, and you try to start a radio show at UVA?
That was my short-lived dabbling with the South.
Yeah. So what happened was that radio station, that radio show you tried to start and then left, my brother went to UVA. He picked up on that, started a radio show. When he graduated and I came, I picked up that radio show, which started my career. So people remember Adrian B. back in those days.
I didn't actually try to get a show. I used to hang out with a DJ named Fly Guy from Baltimore, and he was nice. And the crazy thing is, when the Kickstarter campaign launched, the word got to him, and he reached out to me. And this is someone that hugely influential on me. Like, he was a real DJ. I was just a kid that just wanted to get on.
Yeah.
And I never knew what happened to him. Never knew. And then now I know. He's an attorney, living in Baltimore.
Nice.
He's like, I still got all my crates. Fuck these DJs with their with their computers.
They all up
I was
in
like,
stores.
yes, he's doing good.
Fly Guy Esquire.
Yeah, that's a great name. Well, listen, on that note, we're going to have to wrap it up here. Give a round of applause for Stretch Armstrong, Bobbito Garcia.